Question for the two of you. This was your idea. Were you sitting around one night saying, oh, there are fantasy camps for baseball players that want to go mingle with the Rockies. There are all sorts of different sort of fan experiences. How did you come up with this? Why did you come up with this? And Brandon, for you, why did you get involved in this when I assume Bo came to you? So I'll start with you.
Yeah,
Bo.
I just point out Les had an incredible stat about the 20 million people watching the NBA playoffs, the finals last night. 42 million people in the United States are playing fantasy sports. And yet there's nowhere to go for a live premium education and experience like it in the United States. So frankly, you're right, it was a hybrid of a lot of those different things, but never configured in a way that teaches you how to be more successful in fantasy sports and also giving you that access as a GM or owner.
I mean, for me, it was easy to join. Bo, he's a great friend of mine, and he called me up right after he thought about this idea, and I'm like, man, I think you hit a home run. It's nothing available like that for the fantasy players, and so.
Do you play fantasy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't play when I was in the NFL. But since I've retired, I've played, and I used to play before fantasy was cool. When I was in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Who's in your league?
Who's in my
Any
league?
other former players?
No.
Like is Peyton in your
No,
league?
Peyton does not play fantasy. Okay, we get that out there right now. He's not a hardcore fantasy player. But for me,
he's a reality player himself.
I actually did play 1 year with Scheffler and Cutler. 1 year fantasy.
When you all were here.
Yes, yeah. So
that's funny.
And Cutler probably played some beer pong while you were doing it. That's his game, is beer pong. I know that. So, let's cut through all the other stuff. You say they're going to get an education, but if I'm a fantasy player, how are you going to help me more than I can help me? I mean, I can look at the stats and stuff. You were talking about Mike Shanahan breaking down film, but are you going to have Brandon get up and say, guys, here are 10 people that I really like it as an insight? I mean, is it going to get really that in depth?
I think that's the whole key. Is it is in fact going to get that in depth, but in a very entertaining way, very multimedia way. This isn't something like you go to a conference and we're all bored out of our mind looking up at a stage and thinking about lunch. This is highly interactive. This is you getting a chance to ask people that factually just are the elite experts, that it's far beyond just what the stats say. It's far beyond, I can come up with a list and show you what the touchdowns were, what the catches were.
Yeah, that's what
when you start understanding the dynamic of implementing new coordinators and what their systems call for and what matchups and new free agents mean, there's a whole different dynamic that can be added in a very engaging way.
Brandon,
so this is a second level education.
As someone who is going to help me, what can you tell me? I mean, if I say, and there are going to be questions, so I say, I want Brandon Marshall. He's just been traded to the Jets. And I liked that he actually was the most functional person in a dysfunctional team last year. But does he have anything left? How would you respond to me? Would you take him out of the air? Would you think he would be a good pick for a fantasy player this year?
Well, depending on the player, but a Brandon Marshall, he is getting a little bit older. And then you go back and you look at the quarterback situation that they have there. So, I mean, he wouldn't be somebody that I would touch right away early on, maybe a late round pick. But for me also, it's also not just the season long ones, it's the weekly. What's a good matchup this week for a slot receiver? Going against what kind of defense? And I think that's also a big aspect nowadays with fantasy sports.
Bo, besides fantasy advice, what will folks get when they come out to the Wynn?
I think that they'll have the experience that only a place like Wynn Las Vegas brings, which is a chance to be with your friends in a beautiful environment. Frankly, the most beautiful property in my mind in the United States.
What about access to people like Brandon and Ditka and Mike Shanahan? Are they going to be able to rub shoulders, have a conversation,
Correct.
grab a sandwich, etc.?
Right. I think that we're going to give them a ton of access. As I said, you've got the welcome party on Friday night. You have the sessions all day Saturday. You will have a chance, just as if you were at a conference, where you have a chance to network with these people. And that's the buy-in, is that people, whether they're current or former, in our case former athletes, coaches, etc., they agree and understand that the level of interaction now is unprecedented. The access is unprecedented. So they're morphing into the new world that says, hey, the more interaction, the more loyalty in terms of the customer and the consumer experience, and that's really what we're wanting to create.
Once again, we're talking about the Fantasy Sports Combine. It's being held at the Wynn Las Vegas, July 17th through the 19th. And if you want more information, go to fantasysportscombine.com. fantasysportscombine.com.